So let's consider another example of eliminating the parameter. This time is if your x of t, y of t involve trig functions here. So if they involve trig functions, you're going to use an identity of some sort. So let's see here. In example 4, x is 2 cosine t and y is 4 sine t. Well, remember with trig identities, one of the main identities here is that cosine squared plus sine squared is equal to 1. So cosine squared, let's see, do we want to use t here? Yes, cosine squared t plus sine squared t is equal to 1. Well, what is cosine squared t and what is sine squared t? Well, if x here is 2 cosine t, then divide both sides by 2, and your cosine t is x over 2, and if y is 4 sine t, divide both sides by 4, and sine t is y over 4. So we've actually got x over 2 quantity squared plus y over 4 quantity squared equals 1, which is actually x squared over 2 squared plus y squared over 4 squared is equal to 1. And I don't know if you recognize that formula, but it's an ellipse. So this is an ellipse. So if the 2 and the 4 were the same, if they were both 2 and 2, then 2 would be the radius. But now you can think of 2 as the radius in the x direction, and 4 is the radius in the y direction. So let's sketch a picture of this guy. So get our y-axis going here, and let's see, x-axis here. And this is going to go out plus or minus 2 in the x direction. Oh, that should be a 4 squared. Plus or minus 4 in the y direction. So 1, 2 in the x, negative 1, negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's actually going to go through this point out here at 2, 0. And then also negative 2, 0, and then up at 0, 4, and 0, negative 4. So let's sketch our ellipse. Something like this. There we go. And then we would need to know which direction does it go. Is it counterclockwise or clockwise? And you can do that just by looking at t versus x versus y for 2 points. So let's do 0 and pi over 2. So if t is 0, x is 2 cosine 0, that's 2 times 1, which is 2. Y is 4 sine of 0, which is 0. So the point 2, 0 right there, that's t equals 0. And then pi over 2, cosine pi over 2 is 1 times, cosine pi over 2 is 0 times 2 is 0. And then sine pi over 2 is 1 times 4 is 4. So 0, 4 is up here. So that's at t equals pi over 2. And you can see then that this is oriented counterclockwise. So this is the parametric equation to cosine t, comma, 4 sine t, and t is restricted to 0 to 2 pi. So that's going to be one cycle of this ellipse. So if we included more time, it would just keep going around the ellipse more cycles. So try problem 3 for WebAssign. So that should be one where you have to use a trig identity to eliminate the parameter, and usually it's this identity.